Jonathan Teller's shuttle docked smoothly at the central space station of the Galactic core, the heart of a sprawling empire that encompassed thousands of civilizations across the cosmos. As he disembarked, he scanned the bustling port filled with beings from myriad worlds, each moving with purposeful strides or fluid glides. A man approached him, humanoid with a slight iridescent sheen to his skin, a common trait among the Yalari from the Andromeda sector. "Ambassador Teller? I'm Kale Renea, your liaison officer," he said, extending a hand. Jonathan shook it, noting the firm grip. "Pleased to meet you, Kale. I'm ready to get started." "Of course," Kale replied, leading him through the throngs of alien diplomats and traders. "Your primary role here will be to navigate our administrative processes to establish Earth's trade agreements and political alignments. It's a maze of paperwork and protocol here." As they walked, Jonathan observed the intricate dance of diplomacy and bureaucracy unfolding around him. Kale continued, "The Empire thrives on its procedures and paperwork. Sometimes, it feels like the paperwork is what truly governs us." Jonathan chuckled. "Sounds like something I can handle. Back on Earth, we often joke that if you can't beat them, drown them in paperwork." Kale laughed. "You'll fit right in, then. But be warned, the Empire has never dealt with someone quite like you. Your human strategies for bureaucracy are uniquely tenacious." They arrived at a large office bustling with activity. Screens flickered with alien script, and officials of various species communicated in a symphony of languages. Kale pointed to a tall, slender figure with a clipboard. "That's Grixel, your administrative assistant. He'll help you manage your schedule and necessary documentation." Grixel nodded solemnly at Jonathan, his eyes flickering with a hint of curiosity. "Welcome, Ambassador. I have arranged your first meeting with the Trade Council tomorrow morning. Tonight, however, you should rest." Jonathan agreed, though his mind raced with plans. In his briefcase, he carried proposals designed to intertwine Earth's interests so deeply within the Empire's bureaucracy that removing them would seem more trouble than it was worth. As the day turned to evening, Jonathan settled into his new quarters, a modest suite overlooking the galactic skyline. He reflected on his mission, aware of the challenges ahead, but confident in his ability to navigate them. This was a different kind of battlefield, one fought with forms and clauses rather than weapons. Tomorrow would be the true test of his abilities, and as he drifted to sleep, the phrase echoed in his thoughts. The Galactic Empire, unbeknownst to them, was about to be crushed by human bureaucracy. Chapter 2. The Tangled Webs of Bureaucracy. Jonathan awoke early, feeling invigorated despite the unfamiliar surroundings. He dressed in a suit that matched the formal attire of the Empire's elite bureaucrats and prepared for his first major engagement, a meeting with the Trade Council. Grixel arrived promptly to escort him. "Good morning, Ambassador. If you follow my schedule, you'll find the bureaucracy here manageable." As they made their way to the council chambers, they were joined by another human, Mark Levinson, an expert in interstellar trade law. Mark was tall, with an easy smile and a sharp mind. "Jonathan, I've reviewed your proposals," he said, handing over a tablet filled with notes. "You're pushing hard with these clauses. It's ambitious." Jonathan grinned. "That's the plan. We need to weave our standards into their policies subtly." Mark nodded. "Just be ready to play the long game." These officials pride themselves on their meticulousness. Entering the council chambers, a vast room with a high dome, Jonathan and Mark were greeted by a circle of alien officials. The chair of the council, a stern-looking figure with luminescent blue skin, addressed Jonathan. "Ambassador Teller, we are intrigued by your eagerness to integrate Earth into our trade systems. Let us hear your proposals." Jonathan stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Honored members, Earth offers unique resources and technological innovations that can benefit the Empire. However, for a fruitful partnership, we seek certain amendments to the current trade protocols. As Jonathan outlined his proposals, emphasizing collaboration and mutual benefits, the council members whispered among themselves, their antennae twitching in interest or skepticism. After his presentation, a council member with multiple eyes spoke up. "Your proposals are extensive and would require significant changes to our regulations. This isn't typical for a newly integrated civilization." Mark chimed in, "We understand the concerns. Perhaps we can initiate a pilot program, starting with a less critical sector. This way, you can assess the benefits with minimal risk." The suggestion stirred interest among the council members. The chair nodded thoughtfully. "A pilot program could be acceptable. We shall convene a subcommittee to explore this." As Jonathan and Mark left the chambers, they exchanged a satisfied look. "Step 1 is underway," Jonathan murmured. "Yes," Mark replied. "Now we prepare for the subcommittee. That's where the real work begins." Back at his office, Jonathan met with Kale and Grixel to strategize their next moves. "We need to keep the momentum going," Jonathan stated. "Let's make sure we're involved in every step of the subcommittee's planning." Kale nodded. "I'll use my contacts to get insider information. We need to anticipate their objections before they raise them." Grixel, tapping away at his device, added, "I will compile a detailed report on the members of the subcommittee. Knowing their backgrounds and interests will give us an advantage." As the day turned to evening, the team continued to plan and prepare. The complexity of the Empire's bureaucracy was daunting, but Jonathan was determined to navigate it successfully. With each regulation and each committee, he was drawing the Empire closer into a web from which it would be difficult to extricate itself without embracing Earth as a key player. Chapter 3: Subcommittee Shenanigans. The newly formed subcommittee was a microcosm of the Empire's vast bureaucracy, comprised of representatives from different sectors, each with their own agendas and concerns. Jonathan and Mark, along with Grixel, prepared meticulously for the first meeting, reviewing data and refining their strategies. On the day of the meeting, the small conference room was crowded with various alien officials, their unique forms a stark contrast to the humans' appearance. As the meeting commenced, Jonathan took the lead, outlining the scope of the pilot program. "Our proposal is straightforward," Jonathan began, his voice calm and persuasive. "We believe that by integrating Earth's agricultural products into the Empire's food supply chains on a trial basis, we can demonstrate their quality and the efficiency of our supply methods." A committee member, a tall being with a skeletal frame and a transparent cranium, raised a hand. "Your optimism is noted, Ambassador, but what of the biosecurity risks? Our regulations are stringent for a reason." Mark was quick to respond, his tone respectful but confident. "We've anticipated this concern. That's why part of our proposal includes a comprehensive plan for compliance with all Empire biosecurity standards, monitored by a joint team." The dialogue shifted back and forth, with various members voicing their concerns about logistics, environmental impacts, and economic implications. Jonathan and Mark addressed each point, backed by Grixel's detailed data projections and precedent cases within the Empire where similar integrations had succeeded. As the meeting drew on, the tone shifted subtly from skepticism to curiosity. The committee members, initially distant, leaned in closer, their questions becoming more focused on implementation rather than outright rejection. After several hours, the chair of the subcommittee, a methodical creature known for its meticulous attention to detail, summarized the mood. "It appears there is a path forward that could be mutually beneficial. However, we will need detailed risk assessments and a phased approach to this pilot." Jonathan nodded, pleased with the progress. "We agree completely. Let's establish a working group to develop these assessments. Earth is committed to transparency and cooperation. As the meeting adjourned, Jonathan, Mark, and Grixel gathered their materials. "That went better than I expected," Mark commented as they walked back to their offices. "They're actually considering our proposals seriously." "Yes, but we'll need to stay vigilant," Jonathan replied. "The next phase is crucial. We need to keep them engaged and ensure our proposals don't get buried under paperwork." Back in his office, Jonathan met with Cale to discuss their next steps. "We need to make sure our working group is influential enough to sway opinions, but also capable of cutting through the red tape," he explained. Cale nodded, pulling up profiles on his device. "I'll start putting feelers out. We need allies who are as adept at navigating this bureaucracy as we are." As the sun set on another day at the Galactic core, Jonathan felt a cautious optimism. They had made inroads, but the real challenge lay ahead, ensuring the pilot program not only started but also succeeded, thus embedding Earth deeper into the fabric of the Empire's economy and, by extension, its governance. The phrase he had thought upon his arrival came back to him. The Galactic Empire, crushed by human bureaucracy, seemed not just a hopeful statement, but a plausible outcome. Chapter 4: Strategic Alliances. A few weeks had passed since the formation of the working group. The pilot program's complexity required careful crafting of alliances and strategies. Jonathan, Cale, and Mark sat in Jonathan's office, poring over a list of potential allies within the Galactic Empire's bureaucratic labyrinth. "We need to focus on those who stand to gain from our success," Jonathan suggested, tapping on the digital screen displaying profiles of various officials. "This one here, Director Sorlix, controls import regulations for the sector. If we get him on board, it'll make our path much smoother." Mark nodded in agreement. "I've dealt with Sorlix before. He's pragmatic. If we can demonstrate the economic benefits, he'll listen. I suggest we arrange a meeting." Cale, ever the connector, chimed in. "I'll arrange a dinner. Neutral ground. Informal. It's easier to discuss possibilities over a meal than in a formal office setting." The scene at the dinner was a mix of cautious diplomacy and subtle negotiation. Sorlix, a towering figure with a penchant for exotic meals, seemed intrigued as Jonathan laid out the benefits of the pilot program. "Imagine, Sorlix, the increase in trade volume and the boost to your sector's economy," Jonathan proposed, presenting data on a holoscreen. "Earth's agricultural innovations could significantly reduce food scarcity issues here." Sorlix, chewing thoughtfully on a delicacy, finally spoke. "You make a compelling case, Ambassador. I am interested, but you must understand my position requires guarantees of safety and compliance. My reputation is on the line." "Understandable," Mark replied. "We are prepared to comply with all inspection protocols. We can even set up an observation mission for your team on Earth, to witness our processes firsthand." This offer seemed to pique Sorlix's interest. "A direct observation mission, you say? That might just sway the naysayers in my department." With Sorlix tentatively on board, the team felt a surge of momentum. The next steps involved detailed planning sessions with Sorlix's aides, focusing on logistics and regulatory compliance. Back at his office, Jonathan received a communication from another potential ally, a mid-level bureaucrat named Vilan, known for his influence in the Environmental Oversight Committee. Vilan was curious but cautious. "Jonathan, I've heard about your initiatives." Vilan's voice crackled over the comlink. "My committee is concerned about the environmental impact of your agricultural products. We're aware of the importance your empire places on environmental stewardship," Jonathan responded. "We propose an environmental impact study, jointly conducted. It shows our commitment and ensures compliance with your standards." Vilan paused, then replied, a joint study could work. It would help mitigate concerns and provide transparency. Let's discuss this further. As the call ended, Jonathan turned to Grixel. Set up a meeting with Violin. Let's get this study approved. Days turned into nights as Jonathan and his team worked tirelessly, meeting after meeting, always pushing the boundaries of diplomacy and leveraging human ingenuity to weave their web deeper into the Empire's structure. In his quieter moments, Jonathan pondered the intricate dance of interstellar bureaucracy. Each successful negotiation, each ally won over, brought Earth closer to an unprecedented level of integration. The phrase that had become his mantra echoed through his mind, guiding his every move: the Galactic Empire, crushed by human bureaucracy. It was becoming a reality, one careful step at a time. Chapter 5. Drafting the Details. As the pilot program began to take shape, the devil proved to be in the details. Jonathan convened a critical meeting with his core team, along with Director Sorlix and Violin, to finalize the operational specifics of the environmental impact study and the observation mission. The large conference room buzzed with a mixture of anticipation and tension as key players from various Empire agencies and Earth representatives gathered. Jonathan opened the meeting with a firm handshake for each attendee, a human touch that seemed to ease the stiff atmosphere. "Thank you all for coming," Jonathan began, standing at the head of the table. "Today, we finalize our pilot program's details. It's imperative that we address all concerns transparently and constructively." Sorlix, ever the skeptic but now an ally, was the first to speak. "Let's start with the observation mission. I propose it include visits to your agricultural processing facilities and a review of your technological advancements in biodegradable packaging." Mark, who had been instrumental in setting up the program's logistical framework, nodded. "We are fully prepared for that. We believe once your team sees our operations, many fears will be allayed." Violin interjected, focusing on the environmental aspects. "For the impact study, we need to agree on the metrics for success and the benchmarks for environmental sustainability." Jonathan turned to a team member, a young environmental scientist named Eric, who had prepared extensively for this part of the discussion. "Eric, please outline our proposed metrics." Eric, confident and well-prepared, detailed the metrics, which included soil health, biodiversity impacts, and carbon footprint analyses. "We aim not only to meet your standards, but to set a new benchmark for agricultural imports," he explained. The meeting evolved into a vigorous exchange of ideas, with Jonathan carefully steering the discussions to ensure all parties felt heard and valued. Grixel, quiet but observant, took meticulous notes, occasionally whispering strategic advice to Jonathan. As the hours passed, the outline of the pilot program solidified. The final contentious point was the duration of the observation period. Sorlix's team wanted a longer timeline to ensure thorough evaluation, while Earth's representatives argued for a more dynamic approach to keep the momentum. Kale, drawing on his deep understanding of Empire politics, offered a compromise. "What if we start with a shorter initial phase, followed by an interim evaluation? If the results are promising, we extend the observation as needed." This suggestion seemed to satisfy both parties, and as they reached a consensus, Jonathan felt a palpable sense of achievement. "I believe we've crafted a program that is robust and flexible. Let's move forward together, with a spirit of cooperation and a shared goal of success." As the meeting adjourned, there were handshakes and, surprisingly, some genuine smiles. Jonathan, Mark, and their team stayed behind to debrief. "We've got them on board, truly on board," Mark said with a relieved sigh. "This is where it begins, Jonathan. Our foot is in the door." Jonathan looked around at his team, feeling a deep sense of pride. "Yes, we're in. Now we ensure this program not only starts well, but sets the stage for deeper integration. We're not just participating in their system. We're influencing it. The team left the room, energized by the progress. Each step was a move toward their ultimate goal, embedding Earth so deeply within the Galactic Empire that the thought of extricating it would be unfathomable. The notion that a human's intricate knowledge of bureaucracy could potentially crush a galactic empire was no longer just a strategic play. It was becoming a tangible reality. Chapter 6. Operational Challenges. With the pilot program officially green-lit, the real work began. Jonathan and his team faced the daunting task of implementing the complex procedures they had meticulously planned. Every step was crucial in maintaining the hard-won trust and interest of the Empire's bureaucrats. In his office, Jonathan met with Mark and Eric to discuss the initial phase of the observation mission. "We need everything to go smoothly. Any hiccup could be used against us," Jonathan emphasized, his tone serious. Mark nodded in agreement. "I've arranged for the first team of inspectors from the Empire to arrive next week. They'll want to see our agricultural sites first. We should prepare our staff and make sure they understand what's at stake." Eric added, "I'll coordinate with the environmental teams on the ground to ensure that all data collection methods are up to standard and transparent. We can't afford discrepancies." As the inspectors arrived, Jonathan welcomed them personally. He introduced them to Linda, the project manager for the Earth side of the observation mission. Together, they toured the facilities, demonstrating Earth's advanced agricultural techniques and commitment to sustainability. The inspectors, a diverse group with varying degrees of skepticism, questioned everything from crop yield rates to waste management protocols. Linda, experienced and knowledgeable, answered each query with patience and precision. Meanwhile, Jonathan received updates from Grixel about the progress of the environmental impact study. Vyland's team has started their assessments. They seem impressed with our preliminary data, but they're digging deep. "We should be prepared for more detailed inquiries," Grixel reported. Back at the agricultural sites, one of the inspectors, a meticulous official named Threx, pointed out a potential issue. "Your water recycling processes are impressive, but how do you handle cross-contamination risks?" he asked, eyeing the filtration systems. Linda quickly called over a technician, who explained the multi-barrier filtration process, complete with real-time monitoring and automated alerts. Threx listened intently, his expression unreadable. As the day ended, Jonathan debriefed with Linda and Mark. "How do you think we did today?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. Linda was cautiously optimistic. "I think we showed them our best. Threx is tough to read, but I believe he was impressed by our answers." Mark, reviewing notes on his tablet, chimed in, "We need to keep this momentum. Let's schedule a follow-up meeting with Threx and his team to address any further concerns they might have." Jonathan agreed. "Let's do that. Also, let's prepare a detailed report on today's tour. Include everything: questions asked, answers given, even follow-up actions. We need to show them we're proactive and thorough." In the following weeks, the pace was relentless. Jonathan and his team hosted several more inspections, participated in countless meetings, and continuously updated their strategies based on feedback from the Empire's officials. One evening, as Jonathan reviewed the latest reports, he realized the depth of their integration. They weren't just running a pilot program, they were setting a precedent for how Earth could engage with galactic bureaucracies. As he shared these thoughts with Kale and Grixel, there was a sense of cautious optimism in the room. "We're not just participants anymore," Jonathan said, looking at his team. "We're shaping policies. This is how we ensure Earth remains indispensable to the Empire." Kale nodded, his eyes reflecting a strategic understanding. "We're weaving ourselves into the fabric of their bureaucracy, making it costly and complex to untangle us." Jonathan smiled, his confidence growing. "Exactly. And that's how we'll keep it. The Galactic Empire is starting to realize just how much they need us. Chapter 7. Navigating the Nuances. As the pilot program neared its midpoint evaluation, the pressure mounted. Jonathan convened a strategy session with his core team to address any potential issues that might jeopardize their progress. In a conference room lined with screens displaying data charts and project timelines, Jonathan, Mark, and Eric gathered with a few additional key members, including a logistics expert named Tom and a public relations specialist named Darren. "Let's review the status of all components," Jonathan directed, his gaze sharp. "We need to present a bulletproof case at the evaluation that not only highlights our successes, but also tactfully addresses any setbacks." Tom started with the logistics update. "All shipments have met their schedules, and there haven't been any major disruptions. However, we've had some minor complaints about packaging standards from the Empire's safety inspectors." Darren chimed in, "We can spin that positively. It shows our commitment to compliance and improvement. We've already adapted our processes based on their feedback, which demonstrates our flexibility and willingness to align with Empire standards." Mark reviewed the environmental and agricultural data. "Our impact studies are solid. We've seen a 20% improvement in yield with no negative effects on the local ecosystems. This should impress the Environmental Committee, especially Violin." Eric added, "I've prepared a detailed presentation on our sustainable practices. It includes testimonials from local staff and third-party auditors. We're not just meeting their standards, we're setting new ones." Jonathan nodded approvingly. "Excellent work. Now, let's talk about potential challenges. What are the weak spots they might target?" Tom raised a concern. "The integration of our supply chain with their transport systems is still clunky. It's caused delays on a few occasions." "Let's address that proactively," Jonathan suggested. "Prepare a proposal for improving the integration process. Include it in our presentation as a planned enhancement." As the team delved deeper into preparations, the atmosphere was a blend of intense focus and underlying excitement. They were on the verge of turning a critical corner. The day of the evaluation arrived. The committee room was filled with various Empire officials, including Threx and Violin, both of whom had become familiar faces to Jonathan and his team. Jonathan opened the presentation with confidence. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to review the progress of our pilot program. We are not only meeting your expectations, we are exceeding them." As he handed over to Mark and Eric, who detailed the environmental and agricultural achievements, the committee members listened intently, occasionally nodding or whispering to each other. When Tom discussed the logistical challenges and proposed enhancements, Threx, known for his critical eye, seemed impressed. "Your proactive approach to solving these issues is commendable. It speaks well of your commitment to this partnership." The meeting concluded with a Q&A session, where Jonathan and his team managed to address all concerns effectively and with a level of detail that showcased their deep engagement with the project. After the committee members had left, Jonathan turned to his team, a smile breaking through his usually composed facade. "That went better than expected. We've not only defended our position, but also strengthened it." Mark clapped him on the back. "They see the value we bring. We're not just part of the system now, we're essential to it." As they left the room, the reality of their success began to settle in. They had navigated the complexities of the Galactic Empire's bureaucracy not with force, but with astuteness and strategic planning. Earth was becoming indispensable, and Jonathan was at the heart of that transformation. "Let's keep the momentum going," Jonathan said as they headed back to their offices. "We're setting the stage for a permanent presence here, and I believe we're on the right track." With the successful evaluation behind them, the path forward seemed clearer. They were not just participants in the Galactic Empire, they were pioneers, shaping a new model of interstellar cooperation. Chapter 8. The Culmination of Efforts. The pilot program's success had begun to echo throughout the corridors of the Galactic Empire's bureaucracy. As the final evaluation approached, Jonathan organized a meeting with his team to ensure a flawless closure of this critical phase. In Jonathan's office, where the walls were now adorned with both human and alien art, a symbol of their growing integration, the team gathered around the large oval table. Mark, Eric, Tom, and Darren were joined by a new member, Neil, a specialist in interstellar economic relations. "All right, everyone," Jonathan began, his voice steady and confident. "This is it. Today we finalize our presentation for the closing evaluation. We need to highlight not just our achievements, but how these can be expanded into a long-term partnership." Mark adjusted his glasses, looking over his notes. "The agricultural output has been phenomenal. We've exceeded the initial projections by 15%. I think this should be the centerpiece of our economic argument." Eric nodded in agreement. "Environmental impact is just as impressive. We've managed to enhance biodiversity in the test zones, a point that Violence Committee was particularly concerned about." Neil chimed in. "From an economic standpoint, the data suggests that expanding our model could significantly boost the Empire's food security without compromising their environmental standards. It's a win-win scenario we are pitching." Tom, who had been liaising with logistics teams across several planets, added, "I've coordinated with local logistics hubs to ensure that we can scale up without major hitches. We've got the infrastructure in place to go from pilot to full-scale operation within a year." Darren, ever the communicator, suggested, "We should also emphasize the soft power we've gained. The cultural exchange, the trust built, and the bureaucratic channels we've navigated successfully. It's not just about trade. It's about establishing Earth as a reliable partner in the Empire." Jonathan listened intently, his mind working through each point. "Excellent points all around. Let's weave these into a narrative that not only reflects our success, but also maps out a future where Earth and the Empire are inextricably linked." As they worked into the evening, refining every slide, every statistic, and every word of their presentation, the dedication was palpable. They were not just a team. They were architects of a new era in human-alien relations. The day of the final evaluation dawned. The committee room was filled with high-ranking officials, including the Empress herself, a rare honor indicating the importance of this venture. Jonathan opened the presentation, his presence commanding and persuasive. "Your Highness, esteemed members of the committee, we stand before you today not just as partners, but as pioneers of a venture that has exceeded all expectations." As each team member presented their segment, the response was overwhelmingly positive. The Empress, a visionary leader with keen insight into her empire's needs, was particularly impressed. "The integration of Earth's agricultural innovations and environmental stewardship into our empire not only enhances our resource base," she observed, "it also enriches our cultural tapestry and strengthens our economic foundations." As the meeting concluded, there was a sense of historic achievement. Handshakes were exchanged, and there were even some embraces, a sign of the deep relationships forged. Walking back to his office, Jonathan felt a surge of pride. They had done it. They had woven Earth so deeply into the fabric of the Galactic Empire that the thought of untangling it was inconceivable. Reflecting on the journey, he mused, the Galactic Empire, crushed by human bureaucracy, but in a way that nobody expected, through cooperation, innovation, and mutual respect. The Empire had not just been influenced, it had been transformed. And Earth, once a mere participant in the cosmos, was now a central figure in galactic affairs. The future was wide open, and for Jonathan and his team, it was just the beginning.